So, I'm on to the next stage of the well house. I just need to cut a whole lot of lumber into 2x4, or something usable and similar. I have this stack I already finished. So I wasn't initially going to use any of the boards I had as a base plate because I wanted to use pressure treated, but I think with a borate spray I'd be pretty comfortable using this in terms of rot resistance. And this is about 9.5 between everything. Alright, so I've been staging materials for not including the roof rafters and such. I need about 75 studs. I have about something like 58, not including anything I threw in afterward. And then lastly, I have all kinds of 4x and 6x and such. All this stuff is what is left after I have processed a tree, so everything you see here is a tree or section of tree. Pile's all set. The next thing I'm going to do is take these 9.5 boards here and find the way to maximize them uncut. And then I'm just going to set them on top of these anchor points and just tap the board so that it leaves an imprint. That way I can just, put a hole right through there and get it exactly right in alignment. This one turned out questionably, but this whole wall was all over the place, so sticking a straight board on a curvy wall, not great. But the only one that's really a deal breaker is this guy right here, which there's just nothing to be done about that, other than to just zoop, cut it off and call it good. For some reason, I decided to go with stainless flashing way back, probably because I had never used it before. And gosh, is it annoying. Very annoying stuff. Just much harder to deal with than aluminum trim coil. But here we go, flashed. So once I get to the point of framing completion and then I get the layer of plywood on there, then I'll just roll this up and tack it into the wall. I decided to go ahead and torque these down. It's at a pretty low torque setting though. I think this is mostly going to be perpendicular or shear strength that I'm going for here, not so much pulling. So next step is destruction. I have to get rid of this well house. It's completely in the way. Gross. Would have saved 10 minutes if I could find one of my crowbars. I only have 2. Can't find any. I ended up using one of these tree stump prying bar things. It's an improvement. Yeah, you can see that was really, really termite infested and gross. So, because of how infested it was, now I'm going to very thoroughly clean everything with the shop vac. Alright, so that's a little better. The biggest problem is that the original grade was in front of the building. Why would somebody want water to go in front of the building when the front of the building is up higher than the back of the building? That's the real question. I don't really understand it. It's not level, what they did, but yeah, so water goes in front of it and then back into it. That might possibly explain why it turned into a termite-infested mess. Alright, so yesterday I cut all of these 4x4 timbers. I'm calling them 4x4. They're almost always quite a bit larger, closer to 6x6, but anyway, and then I capped it. One thing I realized was I had done this in a staggered fashion, like, rather than doing a 45. And in retrospect, a 45 probably would have been better. it certainly worked out better on the top, because if you look at these corners, I did a diagonal. So I put an outside and an inside, and if I wanted to affix this top, I'm going to call it a top plate. If I wanted to affix this, it works much better at a 45. Alright, just cut up our 47 studs to 6 foot. That was fun. I made a good dent in my wood pile here. So what's left is going to be used for the rafters for the most part. I'm going to use this awesome board. This extra is the ridge board, the very top. Alright, so 47 studs in place, staggered incidentally really, but that's for the best, I think. So this is what happens when you make calculations in the middle of the night and then the next morning order the parts. I have 7-foot panels here, and that's what that would look like. And I thought, well, that's strange that there's such an overhang. That's like a 2-foot overhang. But on the flip side, 7, 7, 14, that's perfect for the orientation this way. So I put a little bit of detail work on the ridge beam, and I just used this routing bit right here and a jigsaw. So you can see I just did a little bit of routing on here. I made a kind of teardrop shape on the end, and that's really just supposed to kind of mean you know, water, because it's a well house. And I just thought, what the heck, I might as well add a detail. My beam is long enough, so I wanted to make sure I had 3.5 here for the soffit area that would probably be covering it, but still make it noticeable. And so this is what I came up with. Obviously it's going to be structurally really weak right here, so tried not to make it too thin. It's not the best water drop shape, but it'll work. And after chewing it over last night, I decided I will actually make it go this way. The actual roofing, I'll line up the ridge beam that way and make it long ways essentially. I feel like there's more integrity that way. And volumetrically, I have enough roofing to do it. I'm just going to have to get a little bit creative. Alright, so in order to hold up the ridge beam, I just marked here, and I'm going to notch all this out with the circular saw. I'm using 4 of these together to hold this. As usual, overkill, but I mean, I have all this scrap, I might as well use it. Figured I would show a quick step-by-step on this, even though it's a pretty simple technique. So mark, cut a whole bunch of lines, and then you'll chisel it out. So basically just turn the board on its side, line it up with your bottom, and then chisel it out in sections. It works pretty well. Alright, so here is our board in place. I have this screwed in all around here, also right here, and just by eyeballing it from a distance, I managed to actually get it within a ½ inch, and then I just had to stick a board on the face and beat it with a hammer a few times to knock it even. So we're pretty good. So I made my template for the rafters, and I cut out 24, which was a very boring process because I had to use a jigsaw for the notching. And I guess a couple tips: definitely make a template. That's pretty obvious. Another thing I would say is oversize your notch, because if there's something just a little bit off, then you're going to need to have a little bit of a margin for error, and you don't want to have to go back to cutting. It's really boring. Here's another tip: pre-drill and set your screws in just a little bit by hand. That way when you're up on a ladder, it's much easier to figure it out. I'd also pre-mark everything, which I haven't done yet. So, next step, I'm going to mark and then start setting these. So, this is what I did for supporting this last section of roofing here. Basically 16-inch spacing with some perpendicular studs. Okay, so I finally finished framing the roof. You may be wondering what the deal is with this notching here. That's just because I got in the groove of things and cut all of them that way. Not really thinking about it. So, next step is sheathing.